All right, look, it's time for us to cut through some of this crap around the US and Muslim fear and paranoia. I'm part of a mailing group with some very, very intelligent people on it who continually talk about their fear of Muslims and how the Muslims want to kill the Americans and how there's just bad Muslim mojo all over the damn planet. And I think that it's time that we just got a few of the facts down to try and quell some of this mob mentality around Muslims. First of all, I'm a philosopher, which means that Islam is a complete nightmare. It's a theological construct. It's destructive of human happiness, of gender relations, of pacifism. It is a religion that in its fundamentalism is fundamentally anti-rational, anti-life, anti-joy, anti-reality. It messes with people's minds, and it is just a wretched belief system. And I want to put that up front so nobody gets sort of confused about where at least I stand with regards to this Muslim stuff. But let's look at some of the facts about the relationship just between the US and the Muslim countries so that we can at least start the discussion with some facts rather than wild opinion, speculation, and some mob mentality. First of all, 9/11 in the United States killed upwards of 3,000 people. Relative to the US population, that's a small number. It's a large number, and they were all evil murderers, and no question about that. But let's just look at the numbers here so we can get a sense of the statistical likelihood of who's going to kill who. Now, Iraq has a population significantly smaller, 10 to 12 to 14 times smaller, depending on how many people have fled the country on any given day, smaller than the United States. 200 to 300 people have been killed in Iraq every single day for the last few years. What that translates to, when you look at the population of Iraq versus the population of America, is a 9/11 every single day for Iraq for the past few years. A 9/11. Remember how mad you were on 9/11? Remember how much you wanted vengeance, how much you wanted to kill and maim and attack and imprison and try whoever did it? One day in 300 years, the US gets attacked. Evil, wrong, no question. But Iraq has one of those every day. Every day, the proportionally equivalent population to 9/11 dies in Iraq every single day. So, would you rather be an American facing possible suicide bombers and people flying planes into the building, which so far has happened exactly once in 300 years? Or would you rather be some helpless Iraq civilian stuck between the US military and the insurgent forces which have come into the country largely as a result of the US smashing the existing infrastructure? So that's, I think, a fairly important thing to understand and to consider right up front, that your chances of dying from a Muslim suicide bomber are infinitesimally smaller than your chances of dying from a US bullet or grenade or bomb or an insurgent who've only come to Iraq to fight the US because they did 9/11 to draw the US into Iraq so they could attack the troops without having to go to Fort Bragg to do it.
So today, in my home locale of Canada, a dark-skinned man with a handkerchief covering or scarf covering half of his face, who was reported to have dark curly hair, opened fire at a Canadian soldier standing ceremonial guard at a war memorial, wounding the soldier. The soldier has since died after being shot, of course, at point-blank range. The shooter then walked to the Parliament building in Ottawa, Canada, where he opened fire inside before being killed, reportedly shooting between 10 and 30 times. What are we to make of this squaring off, of this, and you could say, gaining of wisdom or loss of innocence for Canada as a whole? Well, there is a war at the moment between the West and Islam. And the war goes back to very, very deep historical roots. Now, there will, of course, be massive politically correct cries to not succumb to what is called Islamophobia. You always have to worry and be very, very skeptical when people put forward arguments with the word phobia or gate in them, Gamergate. And so phobia, of course, is one of these irrational words that denotes, irrational word denoting irrational perspectives. And to what degree is it irrational to have concerns about an Islamic or Muslim population in your country? Well, around a third of young British Muslims favor killing in the name of Islam, according to a survey released by WikiLeaks, publication of US diplomatic cables. 1 in 4, 25% of Muslims, support suicide attacks against British troops. From 2007, 26% of younger Muslims in America believe suicide bombings are justified, 35% in Britain, 42% in France, 22% in Germany, and 29% in Spain. So that's not particularly compatible with the multi-millennia development of the separation of church and state and freedom of religion, freedom of speech, and so on, that has literally on the bodies of tens of millions of Westerners been built as an edifice that is one of the great glories of human civilization. It really is astonishing. This is not a tiny group of radicalized Muslims. There is significant support, 25%, 35%, 45%, depending on which questions you ask and what you measure, significant support for radical destructive terrorism in the Islamic community in the West. And this is something which cannot be sidestepped. And therefore, it is not fair to say that it is merely Islamophobia that has people having concerns about these communities in the West.
Let's look at another aspect of the horror that people have about the Muslims, right? Which is that apparently 25% of US Muslims support suicide bombing. Well, that of course is pretty bad, no question, right? I mean, suicide bombing is a form of terrorism. Terrorism is defined as the use of violence to achieve political ends, say, like toppling a regime in Iraq, or say the welfare state, or say social security, or say the military-industrial complex as a whole. That is the use of force against taxpayers to achieve political ends, which is the bribing of certain sections of the population. But, and let's not even start on the brain-numbing gulags of public schools, but 25%, let's say that's totally true, 25% of Muslims support suicide bombing. So what? So what? Are you threatened by suicide bombing relative to the degree to which the average Iraqi Muslim is threatened by the US military or the insurgents who've come there to fight them as a direct result of that invasion? 25% of Muslims support suicide bombing, which affects you virtually not at all. What is the percentage of Americans who support the invasion and occupation of a foreign country like Iraq? See, we're so easy to see the faults and the problems in other people's thinking, and it's so hard to turn that same kind of laser and searchlight on ourselves, but it is so essential to do it if we are to actually think rather than just be mindlessly patriotic and be us good, them bad.